vamos a abordar esa cuestión, cómo interpretan la reconfiguración del orden internacional China e India, qué lugar conceden a Europa en este nuevo equilibrio. Esta mesa es el mundo visto desde China y desde India. Y tenemos una mesa redonda de lujo compuesta por Qingguo Jia, experto en relaciones internacionales de la Universidad de Pekín y miembro del máximo órgano consultivo político del Partido Comunista Chino, y Mohan Kumar, director general de Modwani Jadeja Institute for American Studies de la OPI. Welcome, nice to meet you. Jindal Global University y ex embajador de la India en Francia y en Bahrein. Y contamos con la moderación de Paul Morillas, vocal de la Junta Directiva del Cercle d'Economia. Les dejo con Paul, no se pierdan detalle.
Molt bé, moltes gràcies. Bona tarda a tothom. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you both for being here. So far we've discussed the West. We've had a panel on Europe, another one on the United States. Now it's time for China and India and the way they see the world. I would like to cover a lot of ground in this session, ranging from geopolitics to economy, multilateralism, and the role of Europe. And how do you see the role of Europe in this world that we'll be discussing? But I would like to start with one picture first, if you allow me. The picture will be posted here, and I'm sure you will remember it. It's that one. This picture comes, for the audience, from the plenary meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, taking place in Tianjin, in China. And it shows the leaders of Russia, India, and China in a quite comfortable or cozy atmosphere. And I will tell you the way it was read from the West. And I want you to tell me the way it's read from your perspectives, from China and India. Here it was the clear image of the post-Western world being built. We have a new world order in which the main characters of the world will not be Donald Trump or Emmanuel Macron or Merz, the Western leaders, but rather leaders from these countries, from China, from India, and more doubtful, but still from Russia. I'd like to start with you, Professor Qingguo Jia. Pleasure to have you here. How do you interpret this picture which took place in your country, in China, among the three leaders of the post-Western world?
Well, first of all, this is the best moment. Testifying the relationship between these three countries. We are getting closer. I think the next world order, I think first of all, I think China and the United States economies will be more decoupled. The US economy and the economy of other countries will also be more decoupled because of the tariffs. And China's economy and the economy of the rest of the world will be more integrated. So if the current US policy on tariffs and economic relations are not going to change, we are going to see maybe more and more globalization -1. So the tariff policy on the part of the US is driving the China and other countries together. Look at how many European leaders are visiting China nowadays, and also leaders of other countries. So they are talking more about how to strengthen their economic ties. We're going to have also multilateral economic platforms, RCEP in Asia, right? And also a closer relationship between Europe and organizations like RCEP And also, the economic, I mean, maybe we'll find a way to fix the WTO to make sure that we have an arbitration court working to ensure that WTO rules are observed. So that's not quite a post-West order, but an updated and reformed one.
Ambassador Mohan Kumar, do you have the same perspective from this picture as was just said, like a great moment?
So let me just thank first Circle the Economy Barcelona for getting me here. Absolutely amazing place. I like the president's speech. I think it was great. Look, there's only one way to interpret this picture, and that is that a Western-led order, the liberal international order as we know it, as we knew it, has come to an end. That's clear. But beyond that, Paul, I'll be lying to you if I said that a settled multipolar order is taking its place. That is not obvious to me. I think what we are going through is a period of interregnum between the end of an order and the beginning of another order of which we don't know much. And I think this period of interregnum is precarious, uncertain, dangerous. That's why we have conflicts. And I want to begin by giving you a little bit of what India's perspective is. We actually think right now there are no poles. The way we see it, US and China are two great powers, and then we have the rest, frankly. But in order to be a bipolar order or a multipolar order, you need some harmonious relationship between the two great powers. That is simply not there. Despite attempts at the recent meeting to paper over the differences, I am of the view that there are deep structural factors which will prevent US and China to kind of become a G2, if you like, which President Trump often talks about. So in this situation, our view is that we are seeking a multipolar order, but we don't have the agency to shape it all by ourselves. We are a 4.5 trillion economy. I want to take this opportunity to say that there is a huge power differential between China and India. I mean, you put me alongside my great Chinese colleague. I'm very grateful. But really, the power differential is huge. We want a multipolar Asia before we have a multipolar world order. Now, I'm not sure others will agree with that. And that is why India, because of this power differential with China, seeks what international relations scholars refer to as external balancing, seeking the help of others in order to provide a bit of strategic parity, because by ourselves, we cannot have parity with China. But between Russia, China, India, which is what your question is all about, I have to also tell you that if two of these three countries get very close together, the third country will be very jealous. So, we are not going to be happy, and I'm saying this quite honestly and frankly, if Russia is going to become a junior partner of China, and the Chinese and the Russians just get together and have a no-limits partnership, that would be a problem for India. I'm being honest with you. And I think that goes for the other powers as well. But having said that, it is my view that India will seek to do the following. And I'll stop with that. First, we will seek a multipolar order. We think the best way to do it is through multi-alignment, which means India will seek to have excellent ties with America, despite all the problems. We are struggling and doing our best with China. We still have 50,000 soldiers on the border on either side on eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation. This may not be obvious to many people in Europe. That's why I'm reiterating it. So we've achieved de-escalation, but we haven't achieved disengagement. We have tried to normalize the relationship, and I think that process is on, but it is nowhere near normal. And so we will seek strategic autonomy, which means India will need policy space. I don't have the time to get into what policy space is, but economists will understand what I'm talking about. We need much more policy space than other countries. And if you ask me the one thing that India wants to do, it is to lift 500 million people from poverty. That's the number of people we have in India who are dirt poor. It's a mind-boggling number for Europeans. I mean, your poverty levels are insignificant in comparison. What China has done remarkably is to lift millions and millions of people from poverty, and yet India will find it difficult to imitate the act of China, and I'll tell you why. If India consumes the same amount of coal, cement, steel that China has consumed, then God help Barcelona. You will not have a climate in this world. So you better wish and pray that India follows a completely different path, which is a low-carbon pathway to development. I'm not joking, I'm serious. I was in Paris as ambassador when the climate change negotiations happened, and when the Americans said, why should we give you money, I told them exactly this. And I'm telling the Europeans exactly this. You owe us money, otherwise I sound like a jilted lover who puts the revolver to his head and tells the girl, you better marry me, otherwise I'm going to shoot you. It's a bit like that. We can actually sink the planet if we do exactly what China has done. So I think we are at that stage of development where our foreign policy goals are three. It is growth, growth, growth.
Okay,
I will stop here.
Let me go back to the, I want to discuss order again and the perspective of bipolarity, multipolarity. There will be two actors in the future, or there will be many. But before doing that, and the trilemma you also presented here, which is quite interesting, about these three leaders not getting along very well, or at least concerned, two of them, if they get along well with the third one. But I wanted to show you this graph after this to make the assessment on the world we'll be living in. Because it somehow not contradicts, but puts a nuance to what you were just saying now, which is basically from here to 2050, we'll have two main powers. That is China and that is India. Then, of course, we will have the United States, and we will have another full range of powers, but are not the traditional powers, the emerging powers that will be topping the most powerful economies. These are projections that, that tell us about the world economy that we'll be living in. Are these projections, to your understanding, accurate? And what impact does this have on the global order?
Well, I think one should not be too faithful to the projections, because projections tend to be wrong. Who knows what's going to happen next? But depending on how you measure things, if you use this PPP measurement, then China was #1 already in 2016. But then if you use exchange rate, China is still #2, about a third behind the US. So depending on how you measure things. And also, this is just about economy. You're not talking about weapons. You're not talking about capabilities in doing things. And also, you're not talking about soft power. Okay. So if you include all those things, I think we may end up with a different ranking. I think China is still struggling to improve itself, okay? Not just in terms of the economy, but also in every aspect of China: politics, economy, security, and even soft power. Yeah. So we are going to see more efforts on the part of China in this regard. And also, China has been trying to play a positive role in international relations. President Xi has come up with the term community of shared futures. And he has also come up with 4 major initiatives, one on development, another one on security, global initiatives, another one on global governance, and also civilization. So China has been trying to play a role in urging people to think about how to collaborate and as well as coexist together.
And that is the reformed order that you mentioned in the first answer, by seeking to promote an alternative end of the Western-led order, but still a cooperative one. Is that the vision?
But if you look at what's in the 4 global initiatives China has come up with, you'll find that it's both it represents both continuity and also change. Okay? China, as part to the continuity part, you see most of the values that good values that have come up with over the past decades or maybe centuries. The humanity has come up with. They are there. Okay? And if you look at the changes, China wants to have a more democratic world in the sense that
in which sense?
More countries, their voices are heard, okay? Instead of this U.S. Dominated or West dominated way.
So democratic understood as more representative.
More consultation, more discussion when big initiatives are undertaken.
Okay.
So, I mean, the future is difficult to predict, obviously, but I agree with my Chinese colleague, Professor Xia, that if you take the purchasing power parity, that's not an unrealistic scenario, provided other things remain the same. And that's the problem. Are other things going to remain the same? I give you 3 imponderables to think over and for the audience. One is technology. And I think the kind of changes we have seen with technology and AI, that can completely change economic productivity, economic growth, and so on. We think in India that neither the model followed by the United States, which is market-led, and the Chinese model, which is state-led, that we would like to follow a middle path. And that is what we are trying to do with Europe when it comes to AI and technology. So if we get that right in India, I think this is not an unrealistic scenario. Second, with regard to India, I like this old saying by an economist, everything that you say about India, the opposite is equally true. So I can tell you why we are an emerging country, and I can tell you why we are ranked 145th in the per capita income. I mean, unless you go to India and look at India, you will not understand this. We are just, we are incredible, but we are also complicated, so we are incredibly complicated. That's the only thing. I mean, I know the government is fond of saying incredible India, and I keep thinking, my God, it's incredibly complicated, all right. So India is hard to summarize. We have that issue. But finally, I leave you with this thought. I spent 10 years of my life at the WTO in Geneva, first with the GATT and then the WTO. If I had known this is what was going to happen to WTO, I would have played a lot more golf in Geneva than I did. But anyway, that didn't happen. It's too late now. But I think we are not getting the multilateral trading system right. So one big imponderable is a severe fragmentation of the world economic system. If you're going to see a huge fragmentation, you take critical minerals, rare earths, AI, and you take technology denial regimes, semiconductor chips. So how do you expect me to believe that the world is going to be so harmonious and united that you can have a ranking like this? I don't know, because there are just so many imponderables, and the world is, at this point, is supremely incapable of cooperating on anything that is, resembles an international problem. We can't cooperate on climate. Some people are saying drill, baby, drill, and others are doing something else. I don't know. So that's one problem. The second issue is the rules of the road. I mean, MFN, the most favored nation, and this is circled the economy, so all of you know MFN. MFN has been called into question. The most major player in the world, United States, which was responsible for the creation of the WTO, has sent a formal communication to WTO saying, we don't want the MFN. That is an earthquake for those of us who spend time in the multilateral trading system. That's an earthquake. And then you've got this trade war between the two giants, US and China, with both of them actually departing from MFN. First, of course, the US, the original sin, but others are following suit. And so what is a country like India to make of all this? We don't have the agency, as I said, with a $4.5 trillion. $4.5 trillion sounds very attractive to you Europeans, but for a country of 1.5 billion people, it's pathetic. It's really small. And the market cap of NVIDIA is more than 4 trillion. So what are we talking about? We need to be at least 10 trillion in order to have influence. And that's why they have 20 trillion. That's why the US has got 30 trillion. So I think those imponderables aside, if you see mutandis mutandis, I would agree with your chart.
Yeah, let me move on to where you just left it now, Ambassador, which is the shape of this new multilateral system. Here in Europe, we are the greatest advocates for that order, rules-based international order with multilateral institutions which are strong, but you both referred to the need to change that existing order. What should a new multilateral order look like, from the Chinese perspective at least?
Well, a lot of people in the West are saying that the liberal international order is dead. Well, to some extent it is, depending on what you mean by the liberal international order. Okay? But to me, I think it's still there, but it's not as prominent as it used to be. Well, in the wake of the Second World War, the US created this order that are interpreted in different ways. Okay? One is liberal, international order based on human rights. Okay? The other is what I call international order based upon sovereignty or sovereign rights. Okay? The liberal international order is now, well, it used to be prominent, especially in the wake of the end of the Cold War. Okay? For a while, people were talking about human rights before sovereignty, okay? Especially in the war over
Libya?
No, the former Yugoslavia.
Uh-huh.
But then now, I think the international order based on sovereignty principles are still there. It becomes more prominent. You know. No country is withdrawing from the UN, right? They all expect the UN to protect their rights. Okay? And more countries, even in the US, are talking about sovereignty nowadays. Okay? They don't want Russian intervention in their elections. So if we are talking about a sovereignty-based international order, it's there. But the human rights-based international order is not taking precedent as it used to. Okay? So we are not going to lose this international order. It's still the best. humankind has ever created.
How does the largest democracy in the world see that order?
So I think the prescription to reform the multilateral order is well known. Frankly, I'll give you two examples. I mean, we've been talking about the reform of the UN Security Council for the last 25 years. Africa, a big continent, does not even have a voice. India does not have the voice. You called us the world's largest democracy. I keep saying that only shows Indian women are very reproductive, but anyway, I'll not get into that. But I mean, we are the world's largest country, but we don't have a permanent seat. Germany, Japan doesn't. So you need a reform of the UN Security Council. You need the big guys who are already there to shed their veto. Otherwise, I take an issue which is very keen or which is very close to one country, they will exercise the veto. And that's as far as the UN Security Council is concerned. I'll give you another example, which is the WTO, an organization that is very close to my heart. I think there are three functions of the WTO. One is the negotiating function. The other is the dispute settlement function. Other is the trade monitoring function. We will leave aside the trade monitoring function. On both the negotiating function and the dispute settlement function, pages after pages of reform proposals have been submitted to the WTO Secretariat in Geneva by Europe, by India, by China, by the US. All you need is political will for the guys to, at least for 20, 25 countries to get together. So the short answer to your question is, if you are going to leave countries like India outside the margins of multilateral institutions, if you're going to leave Africa completely out, if you're going to leave a country like Germany or Japan out, how the hell do you expect multilateral institutions to have credibility? So I don't think the solution is difficult, but it's like getting into a club, but asking one club owner that, listen, you're going to get more people, so your power is going to be diluted a little. Are you going to be okay with it? The existing club member is going to say no. So my prescription, which of course nobody will accept, don't ask the big guys. They will never agree. But they haven't been able to agree for the last 35 years. They've been talking. So ask the others and get the damn thing done. That's the only way out.
But do you agree on the premise that sovereignty over shared values, human rights, is what will take precedence in this new order? Is that what we should envisage, or at least support? Or
the answer is no. You cannot have a multilateral institution the moment I walk into the WTO in Geneva, I'm assuming that I will be asked to part with my sovereignty. Otherwise, I have no right to be there. The moment you walk into New York, the horse-shaped chamber of the UN Security Council, you have to accept that you're going to give up a little bit of sovereignty. But of course, you get something in return, and the larger global good. If you're going to say, I'm not going to part with sovereignty at all, my recommendation is don't go to Geneva and New York. You can be like North Korea. I'm sorry, I mean, I should mention names.
It's not only, I mean, what we're discussing here, it's not only a question of what values or what core components of the order sit at its very basis. It's also about what understanding of the multilateral system do you have? What values are behind that order? What are the main prerogatives and objectives of that order? So it's a much more normative question, which leads me to another issue, which is, for what I interpreted from your previous words, is if sovereignty is to be at the basis of this new order, this might be an order that suits the most powerful ones, right? That suits those that advocate for power and sovereignty at the basis of the international system, of the reformed international system. There are two main powers, of course, we know, China, the United States. Does that mean that we are heading towards a world where the main characters of that world will be China and the US? Is that what the most likely scenario, that we are going in the future of the global system? Or as the ambassador was mentioning before, will it be more multipolar with other powers also having a role?
Well, I think it's just the opposite. I think sovereignty-based values, we talk about non-intervention in each other's internal affairs, no war, okay? No resort of use of force or threat to use of force, and also, territorial integrity and all these vernacular values, okay? That actually China, when it's weak, it tries to strive for these values, sovereignty, equality, respect, and those kind of things. China's long cherished 5 principles of peaceful coexistence is about such kind of values. The value for the weak. Okay? The value-based, the ideology or human rights-based values the interpretation tend to be monopolized by the US and the West. They say that human rights mean that political and civil rights. Okay? But for people in the South, global South developing countries, they think of human rights in terms of right to development, right to survival. Okay? So there are different, but the discourse is dominated by the West, especially by the US. So I think the sovereignty-based values are more broadly embraced by, especially by the weak, by the underdeveloped countries. Okay? It's very interesting that China, despite the fact that it's becoming stronger and more prosperous and wealthy, it still adheres to the principles that are supposed to protect the rights of the weak and vulnerable.
Do you agree?
So 3 values, if I may. I'll keep it short. One is that it's been bothering me, as I have a bit of an economics background as well. It's been bothering me that inequalities between countries and inequalities within countries are both widening. And this is unacceptable. The kind of poverty that you see in Africa, I go to Africa now and then, to think that one third and one half of that continent is yet to be vaccinated against COVID is unacceptable, frankly. What conscience do we have sitting here in Barcelona and enjoying ourselves and so on, when you know there is a whole continent there which does not meet their basic needs? And I think that's a duty of everybody. So that's one. The second thing is what I said previously, climate. It worries the hell out of me. In India, we have seen places 45 degrees Celsius seems very normal now. And it's not daytime temperature alone. The night temperature is very high too. It's all right for a guy like me who has got AC and we are just blasting the air conditioner and living. But we know that 60 to 70% of the people in India cannot afford an air conditioner. So I'm talking of India, which has made some progress. Although we are a poor country, we've still made progress. So I can only imagine what would be happening. So climate is a serious issue. The last point I will mention is, it's often said that the arc of moral compass in the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I have completely lost faith in that saying. You have to get some justice at the end of the day, based on humanity, based on sympathy for one another. You cannot have a situation where we are living worlds apart and Europe is at one stage, the United States is at another, China is a whole new continent and a country, and then you've got India, and then you've got a whole lot of other countries. So I think you have to accept that the world has lost its moral compass, and it just bothers me.
I'm getting questions from the audience, but before I turned into them, I wanted to ask you about your vision on Europe and what you think Europe's role should be in the world you are just discussing. I'm sure the audience noticed when Ambassador mentioned strategic autonomy as a concept that it's not only a European concept, it's also very much used in India, or I would say in Saudi Arabia and other countries that want to be autonomous or strategically autonomous. And also you mentioned this idea of multi-alignment, the way that India understands relations with the rest of the global actors on the basis of national interest, but on the basis of multiple alliances. It's not only one belonging to one single set of actors, but rather to multiple or playing interests with multiple actors. And China likes to speak a lot of time from what Professor Jia just mentioned, this global diplomacy, right? The idea to also build bridges with other actors. Does this include Europe? Where is Europe in this multipolar or multi-aligned world that we will be entering?
That's a great question. We like Europe to play a larger role in global politics. That larger role should be somewhat different from the US role. Okay. Europe has its own interests and also has its own history and experience. I think you'll know better what's good for you. That, to some extent, underlines the assumption that you want to have more autonomy. Okay? And because you are in different places, you have different interests and different experience, and necessarily you have different views as to how things should be done. Okay? And you know, these days we talk too much about security. Security. I think everything is becoming securitized, in part because of U.S.-initiated China-U.S. competition. Okay? China's regarded as the demon, trying to collect information, intelligence, and has a great conspiracy against you. That's the propaganda of the U.S. Okay? I was in the U.S. attending a conference, and the former security advisor to Trump, the first term, and he showed a map of the U.S. with a lot of red dots. He said, these red dots represents Chinese purchase of U.S. properties. There must be a conspiracy behind it. Okay, that means everything is security risk. I remember when the U.S. tried to push Europe to stop using Huawei products. Okay, and the British and the Germans, they tested the Huawei products in their labs for months and found out nothing. But then Europe has, for some kind of reasons, accepted the US pressure and tried to Huawei process at a great cost. Okay. I think this is against Europeans' interests. Okay. You know, if China adopted this approach years ago when China was weak, when China would have never developed. China adopted this open policy, tried to invest foreign investment, use foreign technologies and managerial skills, and then China made it. If Europe follows the US example and cuts itself from the China market, technological exchanges, I don't think this is good for Europe in the long run. Okay. I think the US practice of high tariffs to encourage manufacturing industry investment in the US will work only for the short run. You In the long run, behind the tariff war, I mean, these industries will become so uncompetitive. If you are economists, you know this. But the people in the White House are not economists. Okay. So Europeans must make its own judgment, rather than to be, rather than to let its own policies shaped by U.S. for, the U.S. for political considerations.
Yeah. Can I do a follow-up, and then I'll go to you for final reflections on this? Because as you know, that right now in Europe, there is an increasing pressure on this idea of de-risking, blaming also the Chinese model to be unfair for including European products when it comes to the overproduction of China or the subsidized products that arrive to European markets. Isn't this a situation, or could it be contradictory with what you are advocating for, which is precisely Europe getting more of its own voice in the global economy?
Well, let me put it this way. I think it's another U.S. propaganda that China is successful because of subsidies. Okay. China is competitive in a whole range of sectors. If the Chinese government really subsidized all these sectors, the government would have been broke a long time ago. Okay. I think it's the competition within China and also between China and other Chinese companies and companies of other countries that Chinese companies have become so competitive. Okay. Now we are facing a situation, Chinese companies have become more competitive. What are the Europeans going to do with it? Okay. How do you face the competition from the Chinese EVs? Okay. I think there is a lot of concern, as far as I know. Okay. I think the best way to do it, there are two ways. One is to erect tariffs or administrative blocks to make sure the Chinese EVs are not in. Okay. The other is to form joint ventures with the Chinese companies, and we share technology and profits. Okay.
I'm sure this...
And also compete with other parts of the world together. I think the second way probably is the more economical and more in interest of Europe than the first one. Okay. When China opened up, Chinese companies were not competitive. Okay. We were also worried about overwhelmed by Europeans and the American companies. Okay. But we opened up, we formed joint ventures, we learned their technology and managerial skills, and we became competitive.
I'm sure this will come up again in the 2 days discussions, particularly on electric vehicles. It's a very important topic here in Catalonia. But of course, is strategic autonomy for Europe the solution?
Look, in my dream multipolar world order, you will have US, you will have China, and then you have to have Europe. Europe has everything to constitute an independent pole. But right now, you are an economic giant, but a geopolitical pygmy. And I don't like that, because you find ways to keep yourself distracted. Today, Ukraine, tomorrow, Hungary, something or the other. So please don't take it the wrong way. I love Europe. I've lived 15 years of my life in Europe. I think, when I tell somebody in India that Europe has done something unimaginable, it's like 15 years from now, India and Pakistan join a federation. Can you even believe this? If I say this, I will be killed in India. But you guys have done it. The French and the Germans, imagine. I think it's amazing what the Europeans have done. And you don't give yourselves enough credit for what you have achieved. It's tremendous. But to me, it seems the problem strategic autonomy, Paul, Europe is faced with, and since that is the title of the seminar, I might as well say it now because I may not get an opportunity later. Your problem with strategic autonomy is a triple challenge. You are seeking some strategic autonomy from China because you don't want to decouple, but you want to de-risk, obviously. You are seeking energy autonomy from Russia. And now you are seeking security autonomy from United States, which is telling you you have to spend more on defense and so on. This triple whammy is going to be difficult. And that's what I worry about. It's all right. Europe, of course, Europe has strategic autonomy. So I think the question is rhetorical of the conference. The question is, you are under so much pressure from an economic point of view, from an energy point of view, and from a security point of view, that it is going to take all the genius of Europe. You need another Jean Monnet now. You need statesmen who can reinvent Europe. And you've also, of course, gone and expanded. There was a time when some countries joined Europe, and I used to joke to people in Brussels, why doesn't India apply? We could also be a candidate for European Union, of course. They said, no, you guys don't have the right religion. I said, okay, how's Turkey okay and not India? But anyway, I accept it is your prerogative. But I think to conclude, India and European Union have formed a geopolitical alliance. That's the good news. We have signed an FTA. We called it the mother of all deals. It's amazing, and I hope it works all right. But we've also signed a security and defense partnership with Europe. And that is also because of multi-alignment. We don't want to depend on one single power. And we think we have more in common with Europe than many other big powers, frankly. Of course, there are differences, but there are differences in development as well. You are a rich continent, we are not rich. But still, there is so much Europe and India can do together, especially of the big issues that I mentioned, climate, technology. I see a lot of similarity among the European outlook, shall we say, on many of these things. So my short answer is, I desperately want Europe to be a pole. I don't want in the world for there to be only two powers. Why not Europe? Europe should be a third power. And the fourth pole, in my view, can be some kind of a rotation between India, Japan, ASEAN, Brazil. It's okay, we are not big, but we can take turns, a bunch of middle powers. That is the multipolar world order that I dream of. But then I can only dream, right? I'm not a politician, so thank you very much.
Don't worry, because you're not the only one frustrated by the lack of Europe's strategic autonomy. We are very frustrated too when we are not able to deliver on these needs. But it was very interesting, very enriching discussion that we've had. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. You see it in the screens, and it's us or dinner, so I think we should go to dinner. Thank you very much.